States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. So welcome everyone here and everyone on Zoom land. So one thing that we always are probably remiss in doing, I should like to introduce actually around my table here, but to my left will be John Paciotti, Councillor John Paciotti, Councillor Stephanie Thibodeau, Town Manager Michelle Llewellyn, there we go, Councillor Larry McDonald, and then Councillor Peter Lawrence. I am Councillor Matt Townsend, and then our Town Clerk Christine Keller at the far end of the table. So very good. So I'm just introducing everybody. So you're saying hi.
We've started.
You're good. We started.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
My bad. It's okay.
All right. So the first order of business, public announcements, and the details may be found at www.fairfieldme.com. Nomination papers for MSAD number 49 school board are available on March 6, 2023, and are due by April 14, 2023 for the June 13, 2023 election. Please contact the town clerk for details. So again, available on March 6th, due by April 14th for the June 13th election. 5 days there. So the next item for business is the Kennebec Regional Development Authority will hold its annual budget meeting for First Park on Thursday, March 16th at 5 p.m. Location to be determined. Members of the public are encouraged to attend for the purpose of voting on the annual budget. And number 3, heavy loads limited roadway signage has been posted throughout the municipality. That means spring is coming. So please contact Public Works with any questions. Second order of business, public hearings. I have none on my list. Third order of business, public comments, limit of 3 minutes. Members of the public may speak to the council or request opportunity to speak on a specific item that is on the agenda, or may email comments for council to info@fairfieldme.com by 4 p.m. of the day of the meeting. Submitted content may be read aloud at this time. Anyone wishing to speak?
There's no email comments.
Okay. And comments in the crowd? Okay. Fourth order of business, reports from staff and committees. Number 1 is the town manager report.
Okay, so first, one quick little update on your public announcement for the Kennebec Regional Development Authority's annual meeting. That location has been determined. It was determined this afternoon. It is going to be here at the Fairfield Community Center. Yep. So it'll be 5 o'clock on March 16th. That is open to the public for not only Fairfield residents, but all residents of all municipalities that are a member of KRDA. So that will be here. And then also I have for you, on March 9th, I did attend the KRDA Executive Board meeting. Also that evening, there was a community engagement meeting regarding climate effects of Fairfield that was hosted by KVCOG. There were no public attendance at that meeting. We did have 2 counselors that were there, and we're looking for a different outreach option with the possibility of using a survey. So that hopefully will be coming soon. February 11th, we did have the Budget Committee meeting to review all department budgets. That went very well, and we'll discuss that further later on in your agenda. February 16th, the Legislative Policy Committee met down in Augusta, as also via Zoom. Over the course of 4 hours, the committee processed 55 bills addressing a variety of municipal issues such as general assistance reform, the roles of the county sheriffs, and increasing the number of cannabis plants adults in a single household can cultivate. So we cover the gambit of absolutely everything. Some updates that I have for you. The fire department has ratified their 22-24 union contract. We have not received an updated version of the contract yet, so your executive session that was scheduled for the end of the meeting, you do not need to have. We were hoping to have that in time for tonight for you to vote to sign that, but that has not arrived yet. Also, our investment firm, First National, is scheduled to attend your March 8th council meeting, so they'll be here at the top of that meeting. And then I tentatively have planned, I'm just waiting for complete confirmation from RJD Appraisals. They're coming to your March 22nd meeting to start the discussion about the revaluation process. So we're working on good things for the month of March. It's going to be a busy month. So, and that's it for me.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none. Committee reports? Any
Just that the Economic Committee will be meeting March 7th at 3:30 here in council chambers.
Very good. Looking forward to it. The fifth order of business, the consent agenda. So these items are considered routine and standard business and therefore will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests prior to consideration of this portion of the agenda, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered next on the agenda. Item 2318, order that the Fairfield Town Council hereby waives the reading of and accepts the minutes for meeting number 2023-03 held on February 8th, 2023. Item 2319, order that the Town Council hereby approves Treasurer's Warrant number 93, General Fund, in the amount of $114,972.36, not limited to, but including Morton Salt, MMA, and motor vehicles.
So moved. Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor? The sixth order of business, to take action on the following items of business as read by the council chair. Item 2320, order the town council hereby signs quick claim deed for Kevin M. Mello for property located on 9 Bartlett Street, map 20, lot 41.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, any discussion?
This is a sewer lien that matured.
Thank you. All those in favor? The seventh order of business, council workshop and other business. Discuss the emergency management process. I'll leave it to Councilor Thibodeau and Councilor Lawrence probably to talk about that. If they have any discussions, they've been involved, that's good.
Yes. We attended different meetings, and it was, for me, very interesting. It's actually, it's called NIMS, and the National Incident Management, and Dwayne is here to help us through this. And it's amazing. I took so much for granted, Dwayne, with what you're doing in case of an emergency. But just to know the chain of command and how things operate, it's amazing. And this is throughout the country. We all follow the same process. And so NIMS is responsible for providing the nationwide template for all of us to use. And it's to enable the federal, state, and territorial, tribal, and local governments, as well as the private sector and non-government organizations to work together. And here in Maine, we're fortunate enough, we don't have major catastrophes like tornadoes or big hurricanes, that kind of thing. But when there is an emergency, it's comforting to know that people know what they're supposed to be doing. And I know that you're involved with our emergency preparedness for our town, as well as the town manager. And as senior officials here, it's federally mandated that we go through the training as well, so that we all know what the process is. So, Peter, what would you like to say? Anything?
Okay, with this NIMS training, I had a little background in this kind of training. This is at the town level. I used to work at the National Guard level with the Army Guard and the Air Guard side, the EOC, and also too with NIMS. If there's any outside entities, like another state that needs help, they'll go through the EOC, which is run by the National Guards. Then I'll go out to each location saying, okay, we need support. How can you support? They will send personnel with their specialties to this area. Just like that instructor said, he went to Quebec for that fire. So the FEMA down in Augusta will pull personnel too, but they will go to the EMAX and saying, okay, do you have personnel in this specialty field?
Yeah.
And manage this.
Yeah.
So it just says like the policy for the senior role. I used to run the admin side for the EOC. So I don't know if there's any chance we can see the EMAC and up and close there, Dwayne, for the rest of the councils to see what you actually do.
We
don't have an EMAC here in town.
Can you go to the, it would help if you were at the microphone. We're going to make you stand right up in front.
So we don't have an EOC, an Emergency Operations Center.
Is that run right through Somerset up in Skowhegan, or?
Somerset has one, and I could surely set up something for you to visit Somerset. They have a dedicated building. We don't, because we operate differently depending on the emergency. There might be a time when the fire department's in charge, or I am in charge, and there might be a time when the police are involved. And then the police chief actually becomes the incident commander. And then we work under a joint, what they call a joint incident command, where we work together. So if there was, and I hope I don't jinx myself, a school shooting, there would be an incident command center outside of the school somewhere, fairly close but far enough away so that we're not part of the target. And the police chief would be in charge, and I would follow what he needed us to do. Trying to think of the flood, if there's another flood, which chances are very, very remote today. I myself and the fire department would be in charge, and the police department, public works would work under us. But, yeah, I could set something up for you with the county if you'd like to visit there.
Right, that's also where they have the 911, isn't it?
Yeah, same building. No, it's the
No?
building in front.
The front.
There was a-
Oh, yeah,
That's dedicated as an EOC.
right. Yeah.
And I've never known it to be open as an EOC.
Yeah, yeah, I've actually toured it, and it's quite organized. It is an interesting,
Right, so
Setup.
now you visualize that, and you look at the state, there's a room 3 times as big as that,
wow,
with individual desk and
right,
this type of TV.
right. Peter, the EOC in Skowhegan is maybe twice the size of the fire station where we
Okay.
had the meeting.
So they get the.
But it's laid out basically the same way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because with the National Guards down Chamberlain now, used to be at Camp Keys.
Yep.
If there's an emergency nationwide, we have our TVs up and watching.
Yep,
Yeah.
So,
and you're a local resource as much as the national resource. The Guard, I should say.
Yep. Good.
Yeah,
So you thought the training was definitely advantageous?
Yes, it is.
Good.
It is. And something
Thanks for
else
doing
that
that.
came up,
Cool.
because we have emergencies, and you often wonder when the federal government gets involved. And, excuse me, they said if they give 48 to 70, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm reading from my notes, but 48 to 72 hours where the municipality would have to work
We're on our own.
self-sufficiently. We're on our own. And that is to determine how severe everything is. And that, after that 72 hours, that is when the federal government could get involved, as well as the state government.
Yes, and it all depends on whether we as a town declare an emergency, which would bring in the police chief and public works and other town employees, or we just do what we do today, and we all work together and do what we have to do.
Right. And the instructor also said that even after an emergency is declared over with, there still has to be a recovery period.
Yes, it's a recovery, yeah.
Because of the emotional impact of an emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have that portion, and you also have, remember this last big storm, we talked about the $9,000 that well, that's part of the recovery.
Right. Yeah, yeah, so it was an eye-opener for me, and
It was
more
exciting.
respect for what all of you do
It
to
was
keep us
exciting,
safe.
wasn't it?
In that, that recent storm that we had in December where we're in line to get that reimbursement, so they had to declare the emergency, that was done at the county level. And then you also, in order to get reimbursements, then there's a threshold that has to be met as to whether or not it actually can be declared. So that's kind of the level that we deal with now, not necessarily, I mean, yes, in any particular spring or any major event, we could be dealing with floods, right? Say, heaven forbid that the Shawmut Dam breaches or what have you. That would be something that would be more local, as opposed to, usually it's weather events that we're dealing with for the most part.
Right.
So the big issue that we deal with is because 90% of our, we'll call it a disaster, is weather-related. Our mutual aid, closest mutual aid, is experiencing the same weather for the most part. So you have to reach out a little further, and you don't have to wait 48 to 72 hours to call the county.
No.
You can call them anytime.
Yeah, and just so our citizens know, we do have a town council administrative policy and an ordinance for emergency management and public health and safety, so, which you have helped with, Dwayne.
So
thank you.
your ordinance delegates a lot of your policy authority to myself and the manager. So all that stuff that they talked about, the council is responsible for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're physically doing it. Because this is the emergency operations plan on the internet, on the webpage, that you guys can look at. This is mine, which I use, which has the maps and resources and phone numbers and special forms. So I think we're well covered. And there is a first responders statewide mutual aid where we can directly use state resources without declaring an emergency. They had the big fire in, I think it was in Peru. It was a rolled paper storage warehouse. Oh, they called the state. And the state sent them resources as far as for communications, for working with the Red Cross. So there's a ton of resources that I have that you won't have. I have a area fire department's resources list. I have all the flood maps, all the county maps as far as school zones, hazardous material routes, extremely hazardous substance sites, and we have one which is the little brick building on Lawrence Avenue, the telephone company. They're an extremely hazardous substance site because they have batteries, tons and tons of batteries. And then we keep track of, like, Clearview Manor has an emergency operations plan. Usually once a year, at least myself and the police chief go up there and do a little drill and go over their plan with them. KVCC, DCI, which is the medical facility on the corner of the Ridge Road. We help them with their plan. The schools all have plans. So there's a lot to it.
Well, thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Thanks for the organization. And again, thank you, Stephanie, thank you for Peter for working on that.
And we are working on finding out whether or not it's actually mandatory for every one of you to go or not, or whether us keeping a majority is okay, trained, because John has had the training years ago.
Right.
And we're keeping track of that now as we go forward, and especially as we get new counselors on, because we had gotten to the point where John was the only one with any training. So
Right.
we've got that question out there, and we're trying to get that answered, so we'll get that for you. But the problem is they don't often offer the class. It's only just recently that that's been happening, so this is a new addition.
It's one of the few classes you can't do online,
You have to do it in person.
Yep.
so. And we also, as far as being NIMS compliant, we fall under the county. So they more or less say if the majority, most municipalities settle for the majority.
And as long as the county stays compliant, we're good.
Right. Right. So,
Good.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Dwayne.
I think now the next item was to discuss the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 budgets. And I think the biggest thing we were looking at, differences between ourselves and the budget committee.
Yeah, so during the budget conversation, as it oftentimes happens, numbers will come in that where the council recommends a number and the budget committee recommends something different. So as we get ready to put together the warrant and the warrant mailer, which all of that's going to come to you at your next meeting, we just needed to clarify and make sure that whether, based on the conversations that were had during that budget meeting conversation, whether the council was thinking about using a different number, keeping exactly the way they were, or changing. Because remember, the warrant is, I mean, the budget that goes forward to the people is the council's budget. And typically what you've done in the past is, if there was a discrepancy between the council's recommendation and the budget committee's recommendation, you would put the highest number as being the number that's within the warrant article question, and know that the debate could happen on the floor, because you can always decrease at town meeting, but you can never increase at town meeting. And let the townspeople make that decision, or whether you received information in which you want to make that adjustment this evening as we go forward. I mean, this is not your last approach to make any changes. Your final day to make changes, it will be when the warrant is presented to you. So that will be at your first meeting in March. So to give you the opportunity to have that conversation this evening, this is what's in front of you.
So yeah, I think the one, and just speaking on my end, would be actually the Grange. And so I think sticking to what I said previously on procedure, I really appreciate the Grange coming and presenting at the last town meeting. In my head, or in my heart, I guess I should say, in my heart, I would say I wanted to support the $10,000 request. In my head, though, I needed to follow procedure. Now we follow procedure, and I guess I would like to talk about that. That's my biggest item. I think I'd like to, as a council, I'd recommend going to the $10,000 for the Grange and following that. But that's up for discussion. So.
Yeah, I think we just simply said we've got two items that the budget committee went higher and one item that we went higher. And I'd just say just go with the higher number and then let the town itself decide which way they're going to go.
Right. There's no advantage to putting a lower number in at this juncture.
Right.
We can always make the number lower.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
One of the things with the Grange, though, is we wanted to know more precisely what the 10,000 was going to be used for.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see us change the council's recommendation to 10,000.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you, Mayor. Rather than keep it at what we had said before at 6,000
Yeah,
or 4,000.
Because at our budget meeting, we didn't have the opportunity, because since we got it on a Wednesday,
Right.
and 4 days later it was a budget meeting, and no nonprofits were here to discuss this at PAL, that just gave us a little disadvantage. They showed on the budget side
Right.
of that. So I think the recommendation of 10,000 for our side should be that one. Should be that.
Right. Well, that's where what I feel should happen.
So would you like to make that change?
We need a motion?
Well, I mean, you could
Or just keep it at 10,000 and
What
then,
I think you should do is come to a majority conclusion as to what you want that number to be, because what has to happen
has to be
is that the article is written, it will say, will the town vote to raise and appropriate X number of dollars for the Grange?
Right.
And then underneath it, it says, the town council recommends X, the budget committee recommends X.
Right.
So if you're gonna put on that the warrant article is 10,000, and as it stands right now, if you went with the highest number that's put forward, it would say, the warrant article would be for $10,000.
$10,000, yes.
And then it would say, the town council recommends 4,000, the budget committee recommends 10,000.
Yeah.
Is the way it sits right now.
right now.
So you don't necessarily need a motion, but what you probably do need to indicate is whether or not a majority of this council recommends the 10 or keeping it at the 4. And you can straw poll that, or you can motion it, it doesn't matter. You can do a motion in a workshop. It doesn't matter.
You want to take a vote?
Yeah, I'd like to take a vote just to have it on the record. So I would actually make the motion to increase the appropriation for the Grange to be 10,000 on the fiscal year 2023, 2024 budget.
And I'll second it.
Discussion along that line?
No discussion.
All those in
Yeah.
favor?
All those in favor?
Okay, so 5-0, okay. All right, so that takes care of that one. Then you have Spectrum Generations, which the council's recommendation is at 5,000. The budget committee's recommendation is at 8,470. Do you want to keep that one the same, or do you want to change it?
For me, I'd like to keep it as it is and let the townspeople decide.
Well, and you look at what they do and the amount of meals that they deliver, et cetera, why? I like the higher number.
Other discussion?
Yeah, I feel, myself, I feel the correct thing for me to do, where I have a definite conflict of interest, is no comment.
Sure. I respect that, Larry.
Because, I mean, when I'm in this seat,
Yeah.
I should have the taxpayers' interest at heart, and I can't if I have a definite conflict.
Yeah, definitely, I respect that. Christine?
So as your welfare director, I would just let you know that Spectrum Generations provides an invaluable resource that complements and is part of the referral programs for our clients in most need, particularly our housebound seniors, people that can't get out, people that can't go to events, people that can't get to the grocery store, Meals on Wheels. I don't have any say in what you propose for funds for them, but the services they provide, between that and the food pantry, those are the services that deserve the most funds and create the most complement and the most support to your residents that use services and need services. So that's the only thing I would share is that without these services, we'd be spending a heck of a lot more on welfare because they have these resources. The welfare numbers are down. Administration of a lot of what I do is down. So, just to be thinking about that component, just what these folks are providing.
Going through years ago, when my in-laws were in their 90s at home, the Meals on Wheels, not only from a standpoint of delivering lunch, delivering meals, was the aspect that they also were on cue of in case there was anything wrong or something like that, which actually happened in one instance because one of them had fallen down and the other one couldn't respond to the thing, and the Meals on Wheels picked it up.
It's an automatic
and found
welfare
it,
check.
and that happens.
Yeah.
Happens in that. So that's why that Meals on Wheels to me is so important to the community and what they do.
And I think in the presentation that we had you can go around and around, but I think if you just look at the dollar value and then the number of meals delivered,
Right.
I mean, it ended up breaking down to like $1.25 a meal. For that by itself, I think is worth.
Yeah, especially in what we're looking at from an inflation standpoint at this point. Right now, for $1.25, you're lucky to get a cup of coffee.
Right. So any motions or thoughts or votes, straw votes? I'm happy for it.
Well, we've already,
We offered 5,000. If you want to change it, we can. If you want to leave it the way it is.
I would prefer to go up to the, what they're asking for, which is the 8470. I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second. We can vote. So those in favor? 2. And then opposed? 2. And abstain.
Yeah,
Dies as a tie.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, we'll just keep it at the 5.
Yep.
And then the
Now,
8470.
I just want to go on record here. I'm not the only one here with a definite conflict of interest. So it's technically not a tie.
So, so we can talk about that. So
Right, that's why I mentioned it now.
I'm going to bring this up right
No,
now.
so how do you, so.
I'm gonna bring this out.
Yep, so I'll let you talk about that, Peter.
We do not provide meals, Meals on Wheels. The services my wife provides her home care business. They make the meals, so it's not a conflict. They don't provide Meals on Wheels. So there's no conflict of interest in this at all.
But I'm only asking, but are you part of a business that provides the same sort of services that
No.
Spectrum Generations does?
No.
None of the same services are the
No,
same?
no,
So you're not in competition with each other?
no.
Okay.
You feel comfortable with
Because
that?
we are for profit, we are not for non-profit.
That's not what I asked. I
services.
asked if the services were the
No.
same.
No same services, no.
Okay. That's all I'm asking?
Yeah, yeah. And that's
And
fine.
as long as you're comfortable with that answer, then
Exactly, and that's all, I respect that.
I just wanted it out there for,
Yeah, that's all the answer needs to be.
Yep, very good. So that we left at that point,
It's still 2-2, so
Right.
what happens is that because you didn't have a majority, so that it doesn't pass, so it'll stay at the 5,000 for council, it'll stay at the 8470 for the budget committee, but it still would go in the warrant article as the 8470.
right,
Right, so the higher amount still goes in the warrant article.
which is good, and then we can discuss it as a town, which I think Stephanie is what your point was, and I think that's valid as well. I really do. I think that's good. I think it leaves it up to voters to talk about, so that's good.
So since you're working up from the bottom and going up to the top, so the council had recommended the 40,000 for PAL, and then the budget committee recommended the 35,582. Do you want to keep that one the same?
Well, we don't have a choice.
I would like to see us keep the 40,000 that we recommended and then put in what the
Yeah.
budget committee recommended.
Great.
And then list it that way.
And then
Yep.
we can settle it on the floor.
Yep,
Okay, so
I
that
think
one would stay
that's the way I feel as well. I don't know how you all feel about it.
yep.
And then up top, the general assistance budget. Whereas the budget committee recommended 10,000, but the budget committee recommended 5,000.
Christine, I'd like to ask, are you okay with that number?
Not at all. I already have a client that's going to tip the scales of 10 grand if he becomes a long-term SSI case. Absolutely not. I would have been inclined to ask for 20, but I realize it's too late for that, but no, absolutely not. It would be very foolish because you're required to provide this service whether you fund it or not. It's required in law that the municipality provides this service. So just like you're required to have a clerk who runs elections, you're also required to have a welfare director who administers general assistance. And the state requires you to fund this. It's just not optional. and the 5,000 isn't going to cut it in the instance of the things that can come up. I realize I've had a low budget, but there's reasons some of these years have had low amounts, COVID funds, et cetera. A cremation alone is over $1,200. If I get 2, 3, or 5 of those, and we've had years that that's happened, that chews up the 5 right there, and that doesn't even include people that might have monthly needs. So when somebody has a pending SSI or SSDI case, and they're looking at permanent disability and have 0 income, they're eligible. We'll get reimbursement down the road, but that can take 2 years. You still have to fund this budget to operate within the fiscal year. And you don't want to have to be going back with a special warrant to the people over something that really should just be funded. Unless Michelle wants to add anything else, I think I covered it.
You covered it fine.
Thank you.
So, we had looked back during the budget committee conversations about what the numbers had been in years past. We have stuck with the 10,000, even though, yes, in the last couple of years, our general assistance payouts have been under the $10,000. It is true, you do have to provide that service, regardless whether the funds are there or not. The problem then becomes is that if you underfund it, knowing that you still have to come up with the money somewhere, oftentimes to come up with the money somewhere means it's taxation. So you run the risk of having to do an additional tax commitment, additional tax bill, hold it over until the next fiscal year, those sort of pieces. It is true that we do pay these out, and we do get reimbursements for the most part, but yes, it does take some time for delay. But whatever the council's pleasure is, we have had years in which we have spent $24,000, over $24,000.
I'm just afraid about the need, because since the change from last year to this year, the need might be more.
Especially without the ARPA funds,
Agree.
Correct.
you know.
Well, I
So-
think you'll find that, I mean, it's impossible to predict, but the need is about the same, right? The difference is what happened is there was a change in what was given. But the need within the community as a whole is about the same as it always has been. But the issues that we face is the inability for folks to find housing, the inability for folks to get to public transportation, to get to resources, or that sort of thing. I mean, fortunately, our welfare director does an excellent job with reaching out to organizations like KVCAP, and like she had just said, the Spectrum Generations, but also the homeless shelter, or providing services. We get donations for folks so that they can buy non-perishable items, but household needs, get them through the food bank and that kind of stuff. We have some great resources, and we try really hard to get people to a service in which we're not just funding electric bills so they keep coming back, right? So, I mean, people still have to be accountable for their needs and how they use their available resources. But yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with the 5,000, but I would be comfortable with the 10.
In my opinion, I think we should stick with what we proposed, which was the 10,000. And obviously, then the Budget Committee recommendation, the article would be for the 10,000, and then we can discuss it. But that's my feeling. I think we all are on the same page, it sounds like.
So keep it the same.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And again, there should be something said about the job you're doing, because the amount of resources that you spend or that you use for this is very low. And I know everybody's afraid of what might happen or what could happen, but looking back at the job that you've done, I mean, there's absolutely no reason for anybody to complain about that.
Thank you for
So
saying
whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. You're doing a good job.
So thank you, I appreciate that. So when I came in, the idea was that I'm going to follow the rules. I got the state's training, and whenever I have a question, I call the state on that, and I try to make sure that for every case that I have a signed application for, that you have to, every scenario is going to be different. What's not predictable, though, is I could get 2 pending SSI, SSDI cases, and you're talking 20 grand if I had to see them through for a year or two. So when I was hired, I had a lady who's 2 years through that SSI review process. She finally got her payout. We got a big check at the end. But it was 3 years later that the check came, so, and we had been paying her rent and household goods and whatnot. So by negotiating with the pantry, I was able to get the VFW to fund the non-food items, so now they can get toiletries, soap, paper products, the incidental, so I don't write vouchers anymore for household goods or food. The only food voucher I've ever written was for Similac, for a mother, and it was a true emergency, and they didn't have Similac at the food pantry on that occasion. So we worked hard to see if they could stock that going forward. But these collaborations with all of these agencies that we work with, it's just phenomenal at how it affects keeping the welfare budget down. But you can't predict when somebody's going to pass away that doesn't have the funds and that meets the criteria or the threshold, and how many of those people there might be. I mean, we saw an uptick during COVID, and I was paying several cremation services for families that could not afford otherwise.
That's
So,
most of what our 21-22 spent was.
yeah, it truly.
That $3,800, most of it was cremations. Yeah.
So, like I said, I have no trouble at all recommending the 10,000, because I'm quite
Thank you.
confident you're not going to spend it.
Well,
I mean, you haven't.
if I do, it will be within the accordance of the law.
I mean, I think we're.
I'll make sure of that.
But obviously, we need to give you the correct tools to do your job properly, so.
Yeah, the 10 is an appropriate number compared to the 5, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have one more question for Michelle.
Sure.
The highest amounts, it's a 1.5% increase.
Correct.
This is not raising a mill, correct?
Not at that number, no.
Not at that number.
And the reason I say that very confidently is because our overlay last year was more than 33,008. But what this number does not include is the potential for the $97,000 for Delta ambulance. It doesn't include that. And more than likely, I mean, you'll get my official recommendation in a couple of weeks, but more than likely it's going to need to include that number. I've done a quick calculation, actually. So, as the way the budget stands right now, overall, so all highest amounts, if all highest amounts pass, it's a 1.5% increase of $33,800. But with the Delta piece in there, it's $130,802.84 increase over last year at a 5.82% increase.
And that will raise us a mill.
And that it might. But keep in mind, the revenue sharing numbers are not out yet.
Right.
Okay, so what we've predicted for revenue sharing is 1.2 million, and revenue sharing could be up. I suspect right now that our projections are going to be more than 1.2 million for revenue sharing. So there's a little bit more revenue in there, but we're not going to know that until the middle of March. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to know that number by the time you meet March 8th, but usually it's more towards the end of the month that it comes out. You don't know what the county's going to do, and you don't know what the school's going to do.
That's the problem.
I did have a conversation today with our county commissioner, and Robert had stopped in. They're in the middle of their budget process now, but they're predicting potentially a sizable increase. So time will tell.
Now, you're involved in that, right,
Yes, I
Stephanie?
am.
But you
On the
probably
budget.
can't speak to that yet?
We haven't met.
They haven't met yet.
Oh, okay.
Haven't met. So once the county commissioners are done, then it goes to the budget committee at the county level. So they're making all their recommendations, just like what we did with ours.
I think they're working with their department heads right
Yeah.
now and putting that budget together.
Yeah.
And then it will go to the commissioners. So I don't think their package is done, but they also are struggling with various different union contracts and those sort of pieces. But hopefully, so if the county used the ARPA funds to pay down the bond, then hopefully we'll see a decrease in our county payment because our bond payment will be gone. But we'll see what it looks like when it's all said and done.
Right.
Can we keep sustaining this through the years without increasing taxes? Or,
So you never know from any given year to another whether or not you can sustain, right? So say next year, they do what they did in years past, and we don't get our 5% of the revenue sharing, and it gets taken and used for something else, and all of a sudden, instead of at what could potentially be $1.4 million this year, it goes down to $600,000, right, as to what happened in years past. So you never know in any given year whether what you have is sustainable. You try to best guess it. You try to take what you do know and make a logical choice about what's in front of you. Okay, so last year, our mill rate dropped a mill. But in 3 years, 4 years, we complete a reval and our valuation changes. There's nothing saying that because everybody's building value doubles, your mill rate doesn't go to 11, right? Instead of 21. I mean, it's not, it's impossible to predict what it would be like next year. I can't tell you that until next year starts to get here. I mean, we have a general idea. We've got some union contracts. We have some settled upon wages. But I don't know what medical insurance is going to do come December. I don't know what fuel costs are going to be. I don't know any of those things. And we'll just have to wait and see. Hope for the best.
Right. Or instead of hoping for the best, maybe we should take every step we can to grow
Tax base.
our revenue source, which means
That's
new development.
absolutely correct.
You know, we can't keep coming to the same old wells and say, you're going to pay more.
Right.
We have to grow our revenue source
So, and
with
unfortunately, what
development.
happens in municipalities is that, one, we're nonprofit organizations, and there's very few things that we can do to generate revenue other than property taxes, whether they be residential or commercial, doesn't really matter, right? Property taxes are our source of revenue, and that's kind of where we go. But if you can do things on the economic development side to expand the amount of development that's here, it ultimately just increases those that contribute to the tax base. But yeah, that's the best you can do, is to take those steps and try to.
And that's how it becomes
And that's
sustainable.
why, so like the work that the council has done in the past with like the facade and marketing program or our TIF districts, so for credit enhancement agreements and that kind of stuff is to try to make sure you have everything available to you to be enticing for developers to come to our community. Yep, it's the best thing.
Yeah, you're right, Larry. I mean, the only way to maintain stability is either you have to either raise taxes or you raise your tax base.
Right, and you have to raise
And
the
we
tax
need
base.
to increase our tax base.
And because once you get that snowball started, in theory, as you raise your tax base, you can lower your taxes. And so then all of a sudden, you become even more attractive.
Spot on.
And that's where you want to concentrate.
Any more discussion on the fiscal year budget for 2023, 2024? I think it's well done, so. I guess at this point, we're moving to discuss other council business. Councilor Pachati.
Yes, just quickly noted, I will be out of town during the next council meeting. Well, I will attempt to zoom in. but I'll
Next to
be
the pool?
Quite a ways, yeah, quite a ways away, but we'll work on it, and I'll work with
We'd love to see you.
Michelle and do it that way.
Tremendous. We'd love to see you, but also enjoy. Councilor Thibodeau.
I have nothing.
Councilor McDonald.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. We discussed this last time, Michelle, and I don't know if you had a chance to get the Crawford Fund, that information.
So I did take a quick look at it. There is a possibility that the year, shoot, I meant to have that up just in case somebody asked.
And because we're gonna discuss that on the 8th of March, so it'd be good to have that
That's not
information.
actually part of your regular budget.
No, I meant, you have it scheduled for a meeting with the financial advisors.
Oh, yes, 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 yes,
And
yes.
so it'd be good to
Yes.
have that information for all the council members, so we know what the numbers are going in, so,
I can get you some of that history, so you have it in front of you.
that would be great.
And when these folks took over, because they're not part of all of the history that I have. But you wait just a minute, and we had found, I think the year that they were eligible for, there it is. There was a year in which they were eligible for 90-something thousand, and they only took 50 or 30. That's not it. The question then becomes, is that money still actually sitting there, or is it part of the losses that we had?
There was that. I wanted to, I was really curious about the original amount
Oh.
and how long this fund has been
I
in
did get
effect.
that. Oh, shoot. I'll get it and I'll email it to you. The original amount, what we found is it's in, wait a minute. I put a note in my Crawford file. In my history, that's where it is. We did find it. What we could find was, all we could find was a notation of it, believe it or not, in a town report of the very first time that it ended up in our audit. We could not find anything of an official record of what its original value was, other than when it hit the audit. Like, we thought there would be, you know, like
There should have been an
the Crawford Fund.
amount when the
stuff.
fund was set up.
Right, but the problem was, is it was so long ago.
Do you have a comment from the audience?
From the peanut gallery.
Shelley, was you involved in this?
Okay, so,
Yeah, Shelley Rudnicki. Yeah, I was involved with the Crawford Fund while I was on the school board. It's actually been since the 70s. And back, I want to say, 5 or 6 years ago, there was actually some concern about keeping it with the town and moving it with the school. So there should be some things in the
right, which you can't.
which you can't, no,
You can't.
but because of that, because of the will, because it was actually
The way the
willed to that, and I can imagine it's probably taken pretty much of a hit right now too. So
So it was in 1977, there's a town report that shows that as of December 31st, 1977, the value of that account was $213,930.93. What we can't tell is whether or not that's the actual value of the trust, because the way the trust document was written, there was not a specific amount to be given to the town. It was after this is distributed, this is distributed, this is distributed, it was whatever was left. So I don't see, we even looked to see if there was an official acceptance by the town council of a dollar amount, we couldn't find it. So all we could find is the town report listed for 1977, listed the audit, and this fund was in it. That was the first record we could find of it anywhere, of its
Okay.
original value. And so that's what it was. So the value today, as we had reported, as of today, is $942,750.73. That was as of December 30th of 2022, is what that was.
can I have a meeting at some point?
And then, so that's where that was all at. I do have the history, I'm not finding
Yeah,
it.
and if we could just have it like
Yep.
a few days before
no,
we meet
I'll
with
get it
those
for you.
financial advisors, that would be great. And
Because I'm like,
that way I can look it over, and if I have some more questions, I'll just get a hold of you and
absolutely.
tackle it that way.
There it is, okay. Nope, I think I just found it.
And just one more quick thing.
Yep.
Bob, I don't mean to call you out, but welcome back again.
Thank you.
And
I didn't.
we have no intentions of getting rid of the ambulance service, okay? I don't know exactly what we're going to do yet, but
There will always be coverage for ambulance
Very good
service,
thing
EMS
we
service.
Watch the news for 3 minutes. and they're throwing out all these figures.
Yeah.
But there can be a lot of options, and that's one of the things that I was going to discuss, but there'll be a lot of options, but there will always be coverage. I think we have to cover, and we may have to bear the brunt of that for a short term, but we will always cover.
And, you know, and
Because I don't want to have to go to Thayer on a rollaway cot.
no. And I don't want to see your wife pushing you down KMD on the way to the hospital either. So,
Bed rolling cot.
nobody wants to see
Nobody
that.
wants to see that.
Shelley, thank you for making that comment. Did you have something else to add?
If you don't mind, I should have said something earlier, but just wanted to give you guys kind of a little bit of an overview of what's going on down at the State House, if
Thank
that's
you.
okay, if you don't mind my taking a few minutes?
I think it'd be fine, actually.
Okay, so again, State Representative Shelley Rudnicki. First of all, let me thank you on behalf of the Grange for increasing that. We do appreciate that. But from my point of view, just so that you folks know, a couple of things. I have actually been appointed to the Taxation Committee for the state, and I'm actually also on Veterans and Legal Affairs, which a lot of people don't realize. In fact, I didn't until I got into it a little more, just how in-depth VLA really is. Besides veterans issues, we deal with marijuana issues, we deal with alcohol issues, we deal with gambling issues, and I'm sure there's many other,
Election.
Oh, yes, and elections, of course, yes, we just had some of that. So we've been dealing with a lot of those issues, and so if anybody has any questions, concerns about things, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And taxation, we're dealing with several things right now on taxations, and there are a few things that's coming down that is going to affect towns. And depending on, where they go, but there's a couple of bills in that you might want to just be aware of. One we're working on right now has to do with when towns take the property or somebody's property for taxation. Right now, the towns have the right to do what they want with the money that's left over, if any extra money. And there is a bill that looks like it may be moving forward that will actually stop that, and the towns will have they will get their fees and their costs back, but the money will actually be returned to the owners. So it's just something to keep in mind and to keep looking at. If anybody has any questions, concerns about those type of things, I'm happy to talk about them. And just as a quick heads up so that we can let folks know, I announced on Friday at the Grange Senior Circle Supper is I will be holding a clinic next month at the Grange Circle for seniors that would like help filling out a basic income tax form, because what our seniors do not know, and a lot of them are told that they don't need to file their income tax anymore once they're on Social Security. And a lot of times that's because an accountant will charge them a couple $300 to do their taxes, and it's not necessary. But if they file their income tax, a lot of times they do qualify for some credits, and one of that is a sales tax credit, up to $130. And, in this day and age with seniors, that's a lot of money. And they also qualify for either property tax or rent rebate credits. And I'm willing to help. I helped last year with a lot of them, so a lot of our seniors in this area got the $850 and also the $450. So I will be doing that again this year just to help. If you know anybody that wants help, and it's basic returns. I'm not doing any, help, but it's a basic state return is what I will help with. And we'll be doing that Friday, March 17th. I will be at the Senior Circle to help with that. So I will have stuff there to help with that if there's any seniors that want any help with that. So I just wanted to kind of give you an overview to do that. But please reach out if anybody has any questions, concerns about bills that are coming through, because we're looking at close to 2,000 bills again this year. And I do not expect there to be a change in the revenue sharing, Michelle, just so you, from what I'm hearing right now, I don't expect there to be a change.
Either.
But that's what we're looking at. So thank you.
What was the time on the 17th?
So the doors open at 11, so I will be there at 11 to start helping, and I will stay as long as people need me.
Shelley, what happened to the legislation that was proposed about when we had the juvenile issue and people were in here?
So that one, it's a divided report. It's basically been killed. But we have a divided report right now that's coming down for an increase in the amount that we can go back after, like, a parent. Right now, the state law says that if a juvenile causes damage to private property, that you have the right to go after the parent for $800. But that has not been changed since the 1970s. And they've decided to turn it into a study, but we've got a divided report on that, so we're hoping to move it forward. Senator LaFountain actually also has another bill in that will help with that, and we also have another bill that's supposed to be working through the process with one of the legislators out of the Rockland area that's having a lot of these issues too. So nothing's dead. We're still working on some of those things, but the two bills that I put in, they're divided reports right now, and they haven't hit the floor yet. We haven't voted on anything really on the floor yet. So we're working our way through those, but I do know that Senator LaFountain is actually got a bill in that's working too on some of this juvenile stuff. So we're working on it. We're trying.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for the update.
thanks.
Appreciate it. Councilor Lawrence.
I just want to thank Public Works. They were out yesterday doing co-pack. Also, too, if you see any town employees out there, just do the graces of just give them a good wave, so it's surely be appreciated. So they're out there doing some good work for us to keep all the safety and things like that on the roads. Also, too, I know we talked about one time about the few years ago about the public service building. I think we need to start that discussion as the council, because since our buildings, we are putting Band-Aids on issues that shouldn't be. So I think we should have a discussion on that. Also, too, I mentioned sometime before I left the council last time about a ordinance for solar. Since that there's a lot of solar fields going up in town in the area. A lot of towns have ordinances saying how much they can have acreage in town. We do not have one. I think we should discuss that on how much really solar we can have on our properties, because I've seen more and more are going up.
Private solar, right?
Private solar, yeah.
So solar is addressed in your land use ordinance. It has its section, but it does not limit. We don't limit number of any.
As of one time, I heard that someone's trying to get 3,000 acres in Fairfield.
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
And our property is being not taken. There is a bill down to the legislature for the PFAS about paying farmers, landowners, just the farmers, $20,000. I'm afraid that the state is buying property and going to use it to solar. That is happening already in other towns.
No idea.
And I think we,
I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, Peter.
yeah, I think we
I'll go
should
when you're done.
have the discussion on that. I don't know if it's in the land use.
So, yes, the Department of Agriculture has a program in which they could potentially buy contaminated farms to help the farmers themselves that have been impacted by PFAS. I'd be more concerned about that acreage being purchased and being tax exempt once it's state-owned, as opposed to whether or not
That's what I'm
it's
concerned
developed
about,
for solar.
property
Because
taxes.
if it's not good for agricultural purposes, at least it has a taxable business on top of it. And something of that scale wouldn't be tax exempt based on the way the law is currently written anyway. But laws are always subject to
I'm
change.
just concerned about how many acres we should actually have in this town to actually go to solar. We're losing our property left and right here.
If a person owns a piece of land and they pay taxes on it, they have a right to do with that land what they feel is best, in their best interest, whether it's to put solar panels on it or whatever. The best way to limit that, if that's your goal, is through a taxation process where solar panels are taxed at a certain rate. Somebody wants to come in and do a solar panel development, they know the rate going in, they look at it, see if it makes sense financially for them.
I'm just
Then they
concerned
go
about
forward.
contamination going on as well. Down the road, that you have to get rid of the solar panels, and might be another contamination. I'm just concerned about that.
Again, if somebody contaminates their land and makes it worthless, that's on them.
Large-scale, just for clarification purposes, large-scale solar projects are required to post a decommissioning bond. So like, for example, the solar project that's on the town's closed landfill, there's a decommissioning bond that has been posted on that will stay into effect for the length of that project, so that, say the company goes belly up tomorrow and the panels have to be torn down, it would not fall to the municipality to have to pay to have those panels removed. So we instigated that process many years ago when we started down the path of having this installed. Since that time, when we put that in, because it used to be an option, any large-scale solar project now, the state makes them post a decommissioning piece. Like, it's not an option anymore, so that the population of the state of Maine will not be held holding the bill for the disposal of these solar fields without the developer having to take on that responsibility. So I just want to clarify that. That's not something that we would have to pick up as a municipality.
We may have to talk about our land use ordinance
Right.
and adjust that.
Right?
So yeah, I would say, as me from a farming background, even with contamination, I hate to see fields being filled, but maybe it's the best use and we can have that discussion. So, but I think it's a valid one to have. For me, I think it follows the same thing. I think some land use focus would be important. So thinking about the solar farms and seeing how that fits for our overall economic development. The next thing is also, I think we need to looking at focus on, and we mentioned this last time, on a public safety buildings. I think we need to start that process rolling. We also, a real focus for us coming up in the short next 6 months and less will be EMS and having a solution there, at least trying to come to a plan. And I think we will be able to do that. And I think, as mentioned before, too, we are seeing some funds out there. They're coming out for water. So I think that is always something we need to keep on our, I know we've gone down this road and things they've gone where they've gone. But the fact is, it's still a problem. And having a clean water supply is going to be important for economic development, which goes toward having increased tax base. So I think those are four areas that this council will wrestle with this year. And we should, I don't know when, really think about it in our talking to each other and try to see if we can set up some working groups and start moving ahead on some of those issues. That's my synopsis. But yes, it's snowing tomorrow, so I'll give a wave to the Public Works crew. They do a great job and wish them luck tomorrow. So I think that is it for me. If any other
Next regular
discussion.
meeting?
Yeah. So our next regular meeting at this point will be the Fairfield Town Council. Will be on Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, to be held as a hybrid meeting in the council chambers and via Zoom at 6:30 p.m. At this time, do we have?
Can I do one more quick thing?
You may. We
I
have
just
not
want to take
recessed.
this opportunity, because you kind of hit on the wave to the Public Works guys. A while ago, I brought up the idea of like an employee of the year, and I just want to take this opportunity, while Chief Bickford was here, what do you think of something like that, Chief? Do you think that would be good or bad, or?
I think instead of focusing on individual employees, you focus on the department as a whole. There's several of us in town that take pictures all the time. And then maybe on the webpage and the Facebook, highlight a department and share some of the employees' pictures in what they do.
Like a monthly
Like a spotlight?
Quarterly, or monthly. I know we collect a lot of pictures, and I happen to put on a PowerPoint for the yearly Christmas party, and we just showed pictures. So they're out there, and I know Christine takes some, and Michelle, whenever we get the chance. I think individualism is not the way the best way to go about it.
See, and I like that idea also. That's why I was kind of asking the question while you was here. I mean, just anything to kind of boost morale and...
Boost morale and boost engagement, and yeah.
Engagement and
Good.
So,
Excellent. I
I'd
will,
like to, maybe you can talk to some of the other department heads?
So we had some
Kinda discuss that.
conversations after you had brought that up at a meeting, and the not individual piece was definitely the way to go. Some departments have done that themselves internally. It ends up, what they found in the past is it ends up creating a more hostile work environment, actually. So certainly a department highlight would be a really good thing. One, I think the best part about that is not only do we get to talk about our department successes, but it also gives the public a better opportunity to really kind of like see inside the doors and windows of these buildings that they drive by all the time and what actually is going on. So that would definitely be probably a much better piece. We had some conversations. I've talked to a couple of department heads about what would it look like if we were to do some open houses, right? So like folks have done in the past, you know, like touch a truck events, that kind of stuff, which our staff have taken vehicles to and gone to. Those are always really popular. Those are all things that because of COVID, everybody stopped thinking about and nobody wanted to do anymore. Nobody wanted anybody to touch anything. But now we're thinking that maybe some open houses and that kind of stuff would also be a good thing.
Yeah, so if we could kind of just
working on
move in that
process.
direction, that would
Yeah.
be great.
Well, and the other piece of that too is that if you're going to be looking towards a public safety building, I mean, you know, there's a process for that, right? The council has to come up with a committee and you have to come up with all these things and there's time and all of that. But if you want the people to understand exactly what it is that we need and what we're talking about when we're talking about the fact that you can definitely feel the difference in elevation when you walk across the police department, it might be nice if somebody walked across the police department and actually could feel that for themselves or see that there's no room left at the fire station should a bigger truck happen to come through or that kind of stuff. So it helps folks actually be able to see exactly what it is when we're talking about when we talk about those things. And it's just good.
I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
The more people we can get engaged, the better.
Yep.
So
Very good. So productive meeting. Any other comments?
I'm done now, sorry.
That's awesome.
Motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
They're fine. They're fine.